Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today as part of Camp Mac Giving Day. Uh, just to start off, tell us a little bit about how you first came to Camp Mac and what that was like.
Well, I remember my brother, who's 3 years older, Herman, came back from camp and talked about it. Well, he went with my parents. They were counselors, and went as a tag along, is what they called it then, and then went to camp. So I was very excited when I was in the fourth grade. I got to go to camp for first time for a week, and of course made lots of friends that continued to meet throughout the years going to camp, and even when I went on to Manchester. So that was kind of my first experience at Camp Mac.
So with Camp Mac, what year did you start working there as a full-time staff member?
1979.
79. And what
Yeah.
was your original title then?
I was maintenance manager, I think is what the title was.
Okay. So I know you've had a lot of different hats in your time at camp. So what first drew you to be on year-round staff there?
Well, I was in the office. I was there directing a sixth grade camp, and went into the office on a break one day, trying to find a new job because my company was closing their doors that I was working for. And evidently Arden had overheard my conversation on the phone and tracked me down later that day and said, "Have you ever thought about working at Camp Mac?" And kind of told me the need for a maintenance person. And I said, "Well, sure, that would be a dream job. I've thought about it." And of course, I didn't go with my first instinct and say, "Yes, I'll take it right now." I said, I wanted to pray about it and give it some thought. And everywhere I turned for the next week or so, the answer was always yes. God was saying yes, and in a variety of through a variety of people and places. So that's how that happened.
You never know what you'll overhear. So with all of your work at camp, you were very involved in making Camp Mac a sanctuary for others. But how has Camp Mac really been a sanctuary for you personally?
Well, camp has always been a place where I have gone, it seems, to make major decisions in my life. So being there from, for 38 years, a lot of things happened in my life during that time. So I found it to be a great place to just to contemplate and find a peace of mind. Also as a camper and even as a staff person, and any other hats that I wore, counselor and director, it was, one of those mountaintop experiences, a place where God felt much closer than it has in other places. And, as I worked there and heard stories and so on, camp actually became more of a sanctuary through the eyes and hearing of other person's stories and how it was for them a sanctuary. So kind of all that together, it's in many ways has been a sanctuary.
Wonderful. So with your counseling that you did, what grades or ages did you usually counsel?
Well, at that time, started with what they had. It was a sixth grade camp, and it was the theme was always parables, and that's how I started. I take that back. That's what I did most. My wife and I at the time, and the first time I counseled, I'll take that back. My brother Herman was a director, and I counseled a junior high camp with him, and I think I've counseled a couple third and fourth grade camps as well.
So you've got about as many age groups covered as you can there.
Yeah.
At camp, there are many, many things to do there. If you could only do one thing at Camp Mac all summer, what would you spend your summer doing?
Well, that's a that was really a hard question. So if you had to narrow it down to one, I guess it was the first thing that popped in my mind, and that was a campfire worship experience. Um, so not only as a camper growing up, as a counselor, as a director, in Grand Camp, those were just some highlights that I think that would have to be it. Yeah.
Is there something that you have done at camp in all your different roles that you feel as though more people should do or experience?
First of all, being a camper, being a counselor, and being a director. And I think those persons that have grandchildren, I don't think you can beat Grand Camp. Um, um, I've had great retreats at Camp Mac. I, you know, I said that being on staff was a dream job, and I would encourage anybody to be. I never was a summer staffer, but to be a staff person at Camp Mac and to volunteer. There's all kinds of ways, and um, to volunteer in a variety of places at Camp Mac. So I would encourage all of that.
In what ways have you really connected with God at camp? Has it been big experiences, little experiences?
Well, there's several things about that. One of them is, it's just a gorgeous setting. Sometimes I think we take for granted the work, the prayer, the dedication that went on um, from those years and years ago that made this place what it is today. Um, just that setting itself is just gorgeous. Setting on Lake Wabi and looking out, the trees, all of that is one of those things. And the second I thought about was the intentional community that happens at Camp Mac. It's a place that we connect with God in a very intentional way. I mean, that's not only in the summer camp, although that's a big part of it, but I think in some of the retreats that go on, family camp, grand camp, all those kind of ways. It's being intentional about the community that we have, and then just being there in that intentional community with a lot of different groups, whether it's staff and summer staff that have the same kind of goal and mission to provide that experience for people and working together with people. It makes God more real, rubbing shoulders with people of like mind, I guess. And yeah, it's the staff persons, it's the persons that I was able to come in contact with other retreat groups, other rental camps, to hear their stories and the way that they connected with God made it even more real for me. And coming to know those people, over some of them maybe only for 5 years and others for 38 years. I'd see them year after year, and sometimes multiple times a year. So you get to know their family and see how they grow, and all that's connecting to me.
With Camp Mac and now moving into that grandparent role and being able to see camp as a camper again, not really a staff person. Has that really changed your view of what Camp Mac is at all?
Well, yes and no. I think as a staff person, during that time, being able to do some things like retreats and so on, every time that happened, it brought back to me the value of the staff, and just seeing it from the other side, and watching what they do to make that experience just better for each individual. And so, yeah, it happens again as you come back to Grand Camp, and yeah, not being on staff anymore. Um, yeah, you realize once again the sacrifices that are made, the the heart of people, of staff, and it's more than a job. It's, it's a ministry, and you have a brand new appreciation for that.
So now seeing your grandkids run around at Camp Mac almost to the age that you were when you first came, what are your hopes or dreams for Camp Mac when they are able to sit back and look at it in the future?
Well, the hopes and dreams are the hopes and dreams that um, other people had to make the experiences that I had as a child, and as I grew up. I see in my grandkids and hear in their stories of what Camp Mac means to them, and my hope is that they will at some point be able to give back to Camp Mac as a counselor or summer staff, bring their kids there. That's my hope, that continues to go on just as it has, for the longevity that's been there, yeah, since 1925.
So looking forward to Camp Mac Giving Day, why would you tell people to support Camp Mac in these times?
Well, I thought about that, and the supporting Camp Mac is, that's a great thing to do because of the things that we've talked about already, to provide those experiences. But I guess I would rather use a different word, and that is invest. And I had to think about the stock market a little bit, something that I look at every day. And especially in these times when you see it go bottom out and slowly crawl back up, and you think about the investments that are made into the stock market. But and some stocks are more risky than others, but as I've watched Camp Mac now for 57 years, it seems to me that if I was working on somebody's portfolio, that would be one place to invest, because you're not only investing, I mean, you could invest money, but you're investing in people's lives. And in my experience, I've seen lives change so much for the better. I've watched people grow up as, little children. I think of Jason Railton, watching him just as a little guy following his dad around, and to see what he's done with the Church of God family camp. See other people as campers that I had or I saw grow up and become counselors and directors, and the investment that they've made in time, and money, um, and sometimes just um, spreading the good news, um, of a place that has been around for 95 years nearly, and has changed um, countless lives. And not only, it's kind of the ripple effect that you see when you throw a pebble in the water and it just ripples out there. It's not necessarily just this nation that people's lives have been changed. It's changed other people's the lives in other people's in other nations. So yeah, investing time and finances into Camp Mac, leaving a legacy that will go on for generations and generations. Can't think of a better way to invest.
Do you have any other specific stories or memories of Camp Mac that you'd like to share?
Well, I could share lots of stories and memories. When you think about 57 years, a couple that stand out to me is as I worked there, and as a counselor. At that time, it was always Saturday morning when the kids go home, and you would you'd see the parents drive up, and these kids are glad to see their parents. They come and talk 100 miles an hour, telling them about their new friends, all the things they did, and just on and on and on. And sometimes the friends that they were talking about was standing there with them. And this was 6 days earlier, this was a person that they might have awkwardly said hi to in a cabin, because they didn't know him. But yet now, as they say goodbye to these newfound friends that many times will last a lifetime, you see the tears and the hugs, and Mom, can I come back next year? And those were always special times. I love that Saturday morning when I had the chance to see some of that happening. We already talked about my beginning and the memories of that, and with Arden Ball. Had great memories of both of my kids working at Camp Mac with me as well. And of course, we talked about the Grand Camp, and so far, I've had 8 grandchildren there, and Deb and I are hoping that in the future we have 5 more, plus some that are still old enough to come. So looking forward to those memories as well. And just, of course, working maintenance for many years, I have memories of all kinds of projects that we did, over the years. From the remodel of Becker and Wampler, and all on and on. One other memory, and I'll just close with that memory, and that was wow, it's so tough. But I have the memory of standing in front of Becker Lodge on that July morning and watching it burn. And I'm sure, as all of us that were standing there, wondering what was next, we were in the middle of the summer. And in a few hours, there'd be a big group of people coming, and with the expectations that we all have of coming to Camp Mac for a week. And what were we to do? But as we stood there and we prayed and we watched, there were friends and neighbors and staff that were coming and calling, and God worked through a lot of people, and I still think there were miracles that happened that as I talked later with a number of the people that came that summer and retreats, they didn't see a lot of hitches in what went on. We moved forward, we had camp, we had retreats, and that was even though it was not a pleasant thing to happen, God works a lot of good in bad situations. And before long, we had John Klein, and new offices, and we've gone through all the temporary summer kitchens and temporary offices, and God just seemed like he opened doors. And yeah, it's an experience that won't soon be forgotten.
Yeah, and I think all of us at camp are so thankful for God's presence in those times, and also for the leadership of yourself and others to help make sure that camp is around and can continue to be around. So thank you, Mike, so much for sharing that story and all your other experiences and reflections on your time at Camp Mac. Thank you so much, and blessings on you.
You're welcome, Todd.